I always do my best to try and figure out a little dance for that last little bit because that's my only move, and I always end up looking a little bit like Donald Trump doing that, pumping his air. Well, anyway, moving on. Welcome back to another episode of the Deductionist podcast. A little out of our regularly scheduled programming as this recording is going straight out today. We didn't have the option, the time, or the possibility to get you guys in for a live stream this week, but rest assured, regularly scheduled programming will continue next week. Today, we have a returning special guest amongst one of my favourite human beings to ever walk the earth. You will recognise him from Crime Watch. Now, you will recognise him from previous episodes. Long-time friend who has now unleashed his own podcast, The Warrior's Path. Many of you will not have seen his particular views on discipline and the achievable mindsets that are needed in order to nurture the rationale that is needed to develop the discipline in whatever it is that you do in your work, in your walk of life. It is a special treat to hear from somebody else other than myself for a change. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back Mr. Liam O'Neill.
Well,
Yay! The crowd goes wild. Woohoo! I do have an applause sound effect. Hang on.
hooray. Feel very welcomed now. More welcome than the last time.
I always think that applause, the sound effect, though it is meant with utter sincerity, just sounds so disingenuous.
Yeah,
Anyway,
it's the girl in the middle. It sounds like they've tweaked her bass so she doesn't sound like a real person. She's like, hooray. It's the
hooray!
wife that's used to seeing you do stuff all the
That's
time. And she's
that's what
like,
it is. Yes,
yeah,
on you go.
go
There
on,
he is
man.
in the limelight again. Don't make it my actual wife. She does support me as opposed to this electronic creation. Anyway,
This is
so
very true.
sir, the Warrior's Path. Thursdays, I believe this goes out, and
Thursday and Sunday, I'm a double
wow,
dealing with it.
double dose of delicious discipline. I
That yeah, that's a tagline.
I was trying to on the spot come up with something um, alliterative. Now, though our particular delivery of said discipline might be entirely different. You use yours in whatever walk of life you use yours in. I use mine in whatever walk of life I use mine in. What sits beneath that is, that eternal quest for achieving it, right? And we
Mhm.
we live in a world where our attention is essentially the currency of how we exist and how we trade it off and how we spend it. So, one of the first things I want to kind of open it up with is a rather ambiguous question before we get into the nitty gritty of certain things.
Yeah.
Um, why is discipline so hard to achieve?
Personally, I think it's hard to achieve because people treat discipline like motivation. So people want to get motivation. Something external will give me motivation, whereas discipline is like choosing structure over impulse. So you create discipline by doing the things that you do, not by like say if you go to a PT and the PT says, right, this is our challenge, and you do all the stuff that the PT's told you, but you're still only externally doing it. So that's not really discipline, that's motivation. You're motivated for the PT to go, great job, you look fantastic. And then you go, well, completed it, boom. And then they go, oh, my discipline's gone. You're like, you never had discipline. What you had was motivation. So I think it's a lack of understanding. And because of social media and with so many like I wasn't going to curse, but then I remembered I can curse. Just is bullshit even a curse word? Just
It's acceptable
no.
here. It's
Yeah.
acceptable here.
Uh, you've so many bullshit influencers touting motivation as discipline. Like I'm very disciplined to keep my look like this, or I'm very disciplined to work in my business, but You're not disciplined. You're motivated by money. You're motivated by the outcome.
Yeah.
So that's a long-winded answer, I suppose, to a ambiguous question. But I think it's because a lot of people are not looking to create discipline. They're looking to create different forms of motivation.
Ah, yeah. Got you. So it's kind of changing your gaze from outside in to inside out.
Yeah. So the thing that I talk a lot about on the podcast is you're not trying to create a new version of yourself. So I used to, if you go back to my old work, I've worked with people for a long time. I took a wee break for a couple of years to look after my dad, and now I'm back doing it. But when I used to do it in the past, I was very much about building a better version of yourself, building the superhuman version. But when I wasn't coaching, I was able to do a lot of self work again, and I realized you're not trying to become something else. You're just trying to like peel away the layers of what you already are. Like I'm a big firm believer in frequency and energy and the fact that you can channel all of that. So if energy never dies and energy is always um, just circulating and getting more powerful, then you're not trying to become something else. You're trying to undo what your teachers have told you, what your ex-partners have told you. Like you'll know yourself, like you have a really supportive partner, like we talked about at the start of this. That makes a fucking massive difference in your life. Anything you want to do, like you have someone there going, yeah, you can do that. And if you can't, I'll be there. And if you can, I'll be there. And either way, I'll help you along the way. So we get, I think we get tore down um, throughout our life by different things. And then, so the podcast is now about like transformation rather than um, self-improvement or anything like
Yeah.
that. You're transforming back to who you were, basically.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. It does kind of remind me of yes, he's kind of trite and cliche, and he's kind of mentioned so often that he's almost disregarded. But Bruce, with the whole a sculptor doesn't add clay to the mold, he chips away until the truth is revealed, and that's kind of
Yeah.
what we're doing. It's not about adding some external drug. Essentially, if I get this app, it
Yeah.
will help me. If I read this book, it would. No, it won't. It
No.
needs to change something in here first, in order
Yeah.
for whatever thing it is to have its effect. And you bring up a good point about social media kind of um, embellishing the misunderstanding. Did you see that popular? Well, I say popular. I believe the term nowadays is viral video of that dude. Was it Ashton Hall or something like that, rubbing banana all over his face?
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
the thing that cracks me up about that is, hey, right, if you're going to get up and do an ice water face dunk and go outside on your balcony at 4 a.m. and do press ups, awesome, kudos to you. But let's not forget what the human body needs, right? So if he's up at 4 o'clock doing that, he's going to bed 8 p.m.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
he did release his nighttime thing as well.
did he? I missed that. How did that differ?
Oh, it's pretty much the same, except he goes to bed instead of getting out of bed. But
Got you.
it's a probably all in. It's probably 6 to 8 hours. Like that alone should tell you that that is complete nonsense.
Yeah.
What I really liked about it was one of my martial arts instructors used to always say there's only so much good stuff to go around. And they were doing the face dunk, and there've been a lot of talk about ice water face dunking because of like if you don't have time to get into an ice bath and all that jazz, just do this. And it was newfangled and super amazing. There, I think it's called Red Dragon. There's a Jet Li movie I watched when I was about 16, and that's how he started his day. It was one of the Shaolin trainings was you dunked your face. So I was doing that for years. I was doing it for ridiculous reasons. I didn't know any of the benefits. I thought it was like where I grew up, the traveling fighters would dip their hands in petrol to make their hands harder. I thought my face was going to get stronger and it wasn't going to get when I get hit, it wouldn't affect me as much. But all this new fangled stuff that comes out, like it, if you just bother doing a bit of research, Like it's been about for years and years and years. So that's what I kind of like was he obviously is just a really handsome super beefcake. And he was like, bet you I can make a ridiculous video. And people like jumped on it. People got reactive as well. Like, oh, who would have the time to do that? And you're like, that
Yeah.
guy might have the time. Maybe he's super rich and doesn't have to do any real life
Exactly.
things, so he can do 8 hours of this. Like it's again, if we bring it back to the discipline, people will look at that and say stuff like it's all right for him, he's special, or he's rich, or he is already in shape, or whatever.
Mm.
That's like killing your motivation by example instead of what he was probably trying to do, which was motivate people.
Yeah.
But because people can't create discipline structure, they go, well, that's impossible for he's magic. He's the only one that can do it in the entirety of the world. Um, so I don't know how we got onto the viral thing. I'll let you
that was that
pull
that
us
was
back.
that was my fault for mentioning it, and it was the drive behind the point was to show how these external elements are very often misunderstood, as opposed to thinking, I've seen this guy get up at 4 o'clock and bury his face in some ice and do some press ups, so I have to do that.
Yeah.
The question kind of then becomes, if it is you want to do that because of the benefits of doing it connect to you in some way, first of all, but then also thinking, okay, what would my version of that be, as
Yep.
opposed to doing the same thing. That's kind of the driving force behind it. It's less about, that whole comparison is the thief of joy kind of thing. It's less
Mhm.
about straight up comparing the routines of others to your own, but it's more about taking inspiration from them to see how you could do it in your own life. Do you have to go down the monkey see, monkey do approach of he used bottled water, so I have to use bottled water? He did 20 press up, of which they weren't very good reps, but he did 20 press ups on a balcony. Do I have to do 20 press ups at this particular? Just to find out what the benefits of that particular routine are. If they work for you, awesome. Maybe think about, tap water, cold shower. I don't know, splash some on your face. Who says you have to dunk it? Just go for a little splash at the start of it there. That way of thinking about certain things, straight up copying, as opposed to thinking about what the version of that would be that would suit your lifestyle, that would suit your physical needs, your physical requirements, your mental needs, your mental requirements, your spiritual needs, your spiritual requirements, and so on and so forth. So, a question that comes out of that: why do you think, in your experience of the warrior's path, that people tend to just go for, I will copy this as a way of bringing this kind of discipline into my life, as opposed to just taking that extra step and thinking about it a little bit more rationally?
I think there's two things. One will sound harsh and one might sound harsher. The first one is just it's just laziness. Like people are just so lazy. Like I taught martial arts for years, and people would see me do something and I was good at it, and they would go, "What do you do daily?" And I'm like, "Well, I've been doing this now for 20 years. So my daily routine and practice is 20 years developed. What you should be asking is, what did you do in month one? Because that's where you are now." And then I would say, I did these, like I did low horse stance for 3 months solid. It was the only thing I trained.
Understand.
It was so brutal. It was the only thing I knew. I'd watched kung fu movies and I practiced it, and I had my first kung fu. I went over for a weekend, and the master just said to me, "Right, you're not coming back for a couple months. So rather than me giving you a load of intricate things to do that you're going to forget and then not do because it's too difficult, just do this horse stance." And he showed me low horse stance. So when I came back in 3 months to train for a week, all that stance, all the martial art that I was doing there, the tiger and crane system, 90% of it was upper horse stance. So it was so easy. I was used to being down at a 90 degree, and then all of a sudden I just had to stand at like a 35. I was like, this is,
Here all day.
yeah. So because I wasn't have to focusing on the pain in my legs, there was other people beside me and they were buckled. And I was like, oh, it's because I've stood like, and I hated doing it at the start, but I'm very good at, again, the discipline coming in. I'm very good at locking in and going, I just have to do this one thing and it will achieve the end outcome. So that's the first one, just laziness. Like people want a shortcut. I was talking to a couple of clients the other day and they were asking about High Rocks and do I think High Rocks is going to last? And I said, it'll last as long as it lasts. But the only two things that last in the world of fitness and exercise is complaining. People will complain even though they're paying to be there. And the second thing is magic. They want magic. Ozempics now is the new magic. They just want something to do it all for them. So those are the two things that I think will last in that. So people are lazy first of all, and then secondly, and a bit more deeper, people don't actually know themselves. They don't know what they want. So they look at that guy rubbing banana on their face, and instead of thinking maybe I should eat a banana a day, that'd be a good start. They think, oh, I'll rub banana skin on my face, and then they either eat the banana or give it to somebody else, and they just do this stupid thing. You think I did it with my lovely soft skin, but I didn't. It's just, natural
Or
Irish
sex
beauty.
appeal.
That's it. Um, so they don't know themselves. So they look at that and they think they want that lifestyle. Like he's got all the things I want. He's obviously got money. He's got a balcony. He lives somewhere nice. He just takes his time and has all these gadgets and can afford to wash in bottled water. Like that's what kings and queens used to do back in the day. Maybe not bottled, but like fancy pants water. And they look at that. So they're too lazy to like do any research themselves, look into what they could do to improve themselves. And then they don't know what their end. They're looking at him and his life must be amazing. Like I've worked with some men that have more money than you could imagine, and they are so fucking depressed and they hate their life and everything about it. And they're so worried that they're going to lose the lifestyle, which makes no fucking sense. They're so worried about losing the lifestyle they hate that they keep doing the shit they don't like doing. And it's because they won't sit for 5 minutes and just sit with their emotion, sit with who they are, and then go, well, what do I actually want here out of my life? So I think it's those 2 points, laziness and not knowing yourself.
Yeah, got you. I mean, it makes perfect sense, and the annoying trade off from a kind of objective perspective, almost, is both of them are either purposefully lazy or purposefully not getting in touch with what it is that you need, or innocently lazy and innocently not knowing what it is that you need, because there will be those people who know that they should look further but don't want to, and there are those people that don't know they should look further, and so the end outcome then is the same. And nothing that we talk about here ever is meant from a we know more or have the inside track kind of
If
thing.
yourself, I know everything. Yeah.
But it's more from the, okay, fine, but have you thought about this?
I think
That's
just to interrupt you there, I think it's more we've done it. Like we've been the people that want to like watch Jackie Chan or watch Sherlock Holmes and we're like, I fucking want to be that guy. And then tried the cheated methods and then we're like, that doesn't, I'm not getting anywhere here. And then went back and started doing the like success leaves breadcrumbs. Like you can follow it. So you became a Sherlock guy by doing everything you could to become that. But I imagine at the very start, I don't need to imagine because I know you, we've known a long time. But at the very start, you wanted quicker. If I read this Tony Bazan book, I'll get like, what do I need to do to get here faster? And then you realize, oh, it's about self-development, self-transformation, and self-growth. So then when we come on podcasts like this, our own podcasts and just talking to people in general, it comes not only from a place of love, but a place of like knowledge. Like we're not saying we know everything, but I know a hell of a lot more about the behind the scenes life of Kung Fu masters than most because the gift of the Irish gab or whatever, but I managed to get behind the curtain with a lot. So then I would come back to my classes and I would explain one of the reasons we do this move 500 times isn't for the reason you think. It's actually because that master hurt his shoulder and his master said, do this 500 times a day and it'll fix it. And then it just became ingrained in him. So his cognitive bias was there. So now when we're doing it, this is the move is the move, but we need to think of why we're doing it. So then when I because I again studied Chinese medicine and kinesiology, I knew what we were doing to the tendons. So then when I my teaching came from both stories, both versions. So I think it comes from I know I just completely interrupted you there, but
No, 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 you're good.
it's not just like have you tried that?
Yeah.
Because I'm not saying to you like have you tried bulletproof coffee to keep you awake? Because I never fucking put butter in my coffee in my life. Unless like butter in my bread and I put the knife in by accident or something.
Just quick
And
little stir.
yeah, surprise. But even like if you think about it, I don't know how bulletproof coffee came into my head. I haven't drank coffee in like 12 years. But I wouldn't tell you to do that because I've never done it. But if we use it again as the example, bulletproof coffee was coffee grown way up in a mountain, mixed with goat's milk, butter from way up in a mountain. So its oxygenated properties were different. So when they tested that, they were like, this stuff's fucking great. And then people go, I must do bulletproof coffee because it's deadly for you. So they got Nescafe, not that there's anything wrong with Nescafe, and just golden cow butter, fucked it together. And they're like, it doesn't have the same effect. They're like, it's not even, it doesn't have the same properties at all. But even in coffee and butter, people wanted the faster, I want the benefit, but I couldn't be fucked actually going buying the actual stuff. I've got this lying in the house. So the same thing will happen with
Yeah.
all of this stuff. So whenever we are guiding,
Yeah.
so the way I look at it is, you've done the same. We've trained with like top of their field all over the place, and then brought that information. So rather than you having to spend 20 years to go and study with masters and get behind the curtain and learn all the stuff, you can just come to me. Same as like anytime I've had memory things that I wanted to know about, I just go to you. I don't, and it's almost lazy, but to me, it's not lazy. It's smart. I could study for the next 7 years to learn the peg system as an example, or I could just come to you and you can go, well, you could do 7 years and you'll get it, but I've learned this over my last 25 years of doing this, so just do this instead. So that's not lazy, that's logic, which brings us back to discipline. Like discipline is run by your logic rather than your emotion. So like emotionally, you'll look for pleasure now, even though you have a goal that this pleasure now is going to fuck up. But discipline will go, well, this doesn't match what I want to achieve, so I'm just not going to do that. So you're delaying gratification for like intelligently rather than
Yeah.
delaying it for an outcome you don't understand.
Yeah. No, I completely agree, and that was kind of where I was driving at, somewhat cack-handedly, but have you tried this? Because we have been there.
Yeah.
We found this. Like, have you? It's kind of the road less traveled, mostly because
Mhm.
it's not as resplendent with getting up at 4 a.m. to do whatever it is, it's
Yeah.
it's like, speaking of a movie inspiration, the first time I saw Shaolin Temple with Jet Li, and
Yeah.
then being over there, wow, that is worlds apart.
Yeah.
Little teenage me, getting up in the morning to go and run up a mountain and then bear crawl back down. I'm like, Jet Li didn't have to do this. Why?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you learn through those trials. Awesome. It's great points, mate. So it kind of brings us to this. What is the warrior's path?
The warrior's path is a self-transformational journey that never ends. So you're through the podcast, like I give like we rituals that you should do, and like this week's all about your voice. So it sort of incorporates everything I've ever learned, and rather than me thinking I need to take people on a complete step-by-step journey, I'm just giving out things that I think are important to people now in this society. Like the podcast came about because I've done a lot of work with people, and I was always a secret meal worker. That sounds terrible. I always worked with men in the background. They didn't, a lot of them didn't talk about working with me because they felt less of a man, that they needed somebody to guide them. So, but I realized that doing that in the background, and I've helped people grow £1 million businesses. I've helped people achieve sporting, like world champions in different sports and sports over here as well. But always is the secret weapon. And then everything I've ever done, I want to try to impact as most people as possible. So I thought I can't just keep this to myself. The benefits of it are incredible for people that actually do it. So the idea is it's whenever I was living over in London, we used to every Friday sit all the instructors in the master, and we would sit and the master would teach us something through philosophy, through physical activity, through like just meditation, whatever it was. Even just as simple as we used to drink kung fu tea, and the tea would take probably 20 minutes to make, and we wouldn't talk or anything. And initially, the first two times you're doing that, you're like, this is such a fucking waste of time. Like, I was super pumped to train. I was
Yeah,
like, what am I doing here? And then you realize you're just being present.
yeah,
And when you're present and nobody's interacting, even when you're in a room full of people, you still have to deal with your own shit, which again, men are great at not dealing with.
hell yeah.
And we've been it's sort of been beat out of you through school, through social media, through TV shows, movies, that manly men are Andrew Tates. They're alpha fucking douchebags. And like that's not what like I talked about the warrior in the garden metaphor about 3 times on the podcast. Just came up in 3 different ways. At least one message came out of every one of those podcasts being like, I'm too violent. And even though I've explained in the podcast, I used to love violence. That was why I got into martial arts. And it's why arguments never really affected me, because I always thought, you're saying all this shit, but you're not going to get violent. And if you do, I'll enjoy that. So, like, this is fucking stupid. Um, so we're nearly taught like not to open doors, not to walk. I did it one day, and just with a friend I was walking with, I we walked out onto the road, and I just like with my hand moved her into the inside, so I was on the outside. And she was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, just force a habit. I have a protective nature. I'm like, I'm being protective. I don't need your protection." I'm like, you say that now, but I've been in many situations with people, male and female, that didn't need my protection, and then something kicked off, and they look at me, and you're like, oh, so it turns out you do when it's useful.
Yeah,
So that the warrior in the garden is all about having the choice. It doesn't mean physical violence. It means like having the choice to react or be reactive, having the choice to control your emotional state in different environments. So the warrior's path is just about you unraveling that and realizing that you're allowed to be whatever you are. Like you're allowed to be a vulnerable person, you're allowed to be soft,
mm,
you're allowed to be hard, you're allowed to be aggressive, as
mm,
long as it's all controlled. Like controlled anger
mm,
is useful.
mm,
Whereas like I used to love whenever you were doing wrestling or grappling,
mm.
people would be getting angry, and you'd just be holding them and they can't do anything, and they're getting so angry, and you'd be like, is this helping?
Yeah.
This is not like you're switching off your logical mind. You're getting so frustrated. I'm a wanker now because of this situation you've got yourself in, and it's all because you overreached and I
Yeah.
arm dragged you, took you down, and now you're stuck here.
Yeah.
So if you don't have that like I'm able to go like when I used to work in the bars, I would go from 0 to 100. People would back down and get scared and leave. And then I go back to zero. And the people around me be like, are you all right? And I'm like, yeah. I just knew that I needed to go to 100 to
Yeah.
calm this situation.
Yeah.
Now I'm back. And even gigging, after gigs, I would come home and there'd be people home and I'd be super pumped after the gig and they'd be like, you'll never sleep tonight. And about 2 minutes later, I'm just sitting fully relaxed and just chilled. And they're like, how the fuck do you do that? And you're like, because I have
Yeah.
control.
Control.
And it's control without being controlling. In relationships in the past, I always got accused of being controlling
Mm.
to myself and to them. Like because I because I didn't eat unhealthy food or whatever's considered unhealthy, they would feel guilty that they're eating it in front of me. I don't give a fuck. Do whatever you want. As long as it doesn't affect me, I don't care. Um, so then they would be like, "Oh, so you judging me because I'm eating a McDonald's?" I'm like, I don't, couldn't give a fuck at all. What, like, it doesn't matter. So you're in control without controlling. So that's what the path's about. It's basically about owning yourself, like being disciplined, like creating habits. So I talk about discipline a lot on it and how discipline is about if you're going to learn to touch your toes, you probably have to stretch every day. But if you're starting, you probably can't stretch an hour and a half a day. So let's just start with 5 minutes and just maintain that. And once you're comfortable with five, let's just do seven. And then people will say to me, that's not really enough, is it? I go, if you did 7 minutes a day for a year compared to what you're doing now, which is fuck all, that
Yeah.
7 minutes is going to be significant. But people, like back to that guy's morning routine, people will look at that and want the morning routine and want to be structured and go, that's way too hard. I'm not doing that. And then just do nothing, like nothing at all. Just do nothing. You're like, yeah. So that's what the podcast is about. Um, there's a lot of like actionable steps because I'm not a woo-woo spiritual person. I never have been. I believe that you have to work with the vibration. You have to work with the like if I want to achieve, we just stick with the flexibility because that's what I'm actually working on at the minute, recovering from different injuries. If I want to achieve flexible so I can touch the ground, which I can't at the minute, what a shameful martial artist I am. If I want to be
I
able to
bet
do
Samo
that,
couldn't. I bet Samo couldn't.
Samo was on. So he was like, look at the early Samo stuff was fucking mental with that man.
I mean now. I
Oh
mean
no,
now.
no. He has the chi belly. I used to love that when you talk to masters, and they'd be like, "Oh, you like your six pack, Liam?" And I'm like, "I like having one." And they're like, "If you get into this kung fu properly, you're gonna lose that." And they'd have a big. They're like, "You'll get a chi belly." I remember asking one of the masters that I got to know well, "Does the chi belly have anything to do with the amount of drink and the amount of weed that you smoke with that and the munchies you have?
Is there
Like,
a
is that
correlation there?
anything?" Or is this just pure fucking chi? But to be fair, then whenever he demonstrated, he looked like he could float. It was so weird.
Yeah.
So I that's the so if I'm thinking I want to be able to touch my toes, I can sit and close my eyes and visualize myself touching my toes till the cows come home, as they say in my country. It's not gonna do anything. But if I stretch and visualize, that will eventually create a person who can touch. I'll post it. You'll see it. Follow my journey.
Yeah. Like, comment, and share.
Yeah. So that's basically what it is.
Nice. I like it. It's a noble pursuit, mate. It's similar to some of the things I have to tell my guys. I've got all these books and courses I need to read, and we need to get it done by this time. No, you don't. You don't have to read a
Yeah.
book a day. You can read a couple of pages a day. The important part is that you understand what it is that you're reading about, not how much you get through. That's
Yeah.
because otherwise you'll have to just go back and read it again and again and again and again. The speed doesn't really matter.
Or
Um,
you'll not go back and read it again. You'll think, I don't understand that. I don't get it.
that's yeah, and it has a knock-on effect, and it compounds errors
Yeah.
further. 100%. So, to that end, then, mate, as we bring this a festival of knowledge and wisdom and Irish charm to a close, if somebody is going to take away a single golden nugget that can help them work on their discipline with whatever it is they want to point it towards, whether it's reading more, touching their toes, whatever it is, the discipline part is the driving factor behind it. What's a golden nugget that we can share in that area?
I actually wrote one down because I figured you'd ask that and I wanted to keep it concise. And then I went on a wee rant before I said it, so it's not very concise anymore. But now I'm building suspense and tension. So I wrote here, rational discipline is choosing structure over impulse, not from emotion, but from clarity. It's doing what needs to be done because it aligns with who you've chosen to become, not just how you feel in the moment.
Beautiful. That's
That's
beautiful.
why I thought I'd write it because I was not going to say that as well on a podcast with you. But it's the structure. I think even if you just took it away from the very start of the podcast, it's not about motivation. Like, ask yourself, am I using motivation to try to achieve this goal, or am I using discipline? And discipline is basically structure. Motivation is pissing in the wind and hoping everything doesn't come back on you. Like, it's just that's the nugget. Never mind that nice, concise thing I said. We'll just go with that.
Yeah, let's leave it on the piss. Let's leave it on the pissing in the wind sentiment. So, if you're a fan of listening to people who don't piss in the wind, where can people find your podcast then, dude?
Everywhere, YouTube, Instagram, everywhere. The Warrior's Path podcast. It's on all your ear listening devices and YouTube.
And with that in mind, folks, we'll see you next week for another episode. Bye.